Welcome to the CEO Bros Podcast, After Hours, with Brian Baldoff, co-founded, grew, and sold VHT Studios. Brad Baldoff, CEO and co-founder of By Your Side Autism Therapy Services. Matt Crope, the consummate entertainer, jack of all trades, and serves as our host.
You have a CEO and a CPO, the head of HR, who were in a relationship caught in this scandal. And what better way to discuss it than with two CEOs? So I know I have questions as a non-CEO of what the logistics may be, but you guys want to jump in with some thoughts of the Coldplay incident?
Can we just first acknowledge that the Prince of Darkness has passed away.
Wow,
today.
That's another big news today.
Ozzy
It's
Osbourne, crazy train himself, Mr. Crowley himself, the godfather of heavy metal, has passed away. And cheers to Ozzy Osbourne. Being a musician and being someone that appreciates rock music, hard rock music, we're all going to miss Ozzy. So rest in peace, Ozzy.
My daughter surprisingly put it in the family chat. I have young daughters. I wasn't sure they knew, so I said, you need to listen to War Pigs and get back to me. So I've been
get back to me. Here's your mission. When your mind is blown.
I give him Black Sabbath homework, as a good father should do.
Jeez, you're setting her up for like a whole streak of, okay, after that, you need to listen to this, and then you need to listen to this.
Can't wait.
All right.
Nice.
So, yeah, a lot of news this week. Good that we're doing this format, I think.
Yes. I would just say that, Brian and I talked about this briefly, Matt, before you grabbed us on the call to do this. And I would just say that I'm viewing this from a different perspective, or at least want to focus on something that people know about, but I think is a bigger issue. And that is not the affair, not the indiscretions by the CEO. That's his personal life. And if that's what he wants to do, that's his business, right? But what it should tell everybody, as an employee, as a manager, as a director, as a CEO, that your life is virtually online and it's on social media all the time. I mean, there's cameras everywhere. So it just goes to be seen, you used to hear years ago, like, hey, be careful, what you do, what you put on Facebook, what you put on social media, because if you're interviewing, a company's probably going to vet you out. They're going to look you up, see what kind of things you're posting. And it just goes to show you there's cameras everywhere. And so the reality is that you're in everyone's world. And that's probably one of the bigger ticket items I took from this, or I think should really be noteworthy for everybody, is that forget about the affair, because everybody's going to talk about the affair and the personal life and all that. But the issue is that everybody, every single person, you're online, or you could be online. You could be posted online. So you always have to be aware of your behaviors and what you're doing at all times, because you really never have an idea when that could happen to you. And I'm not talking about an affair, but being online.
I like that you said the reality is. I mean, you could shake your fist at the world all you want and have very good points about its privacy and it really shouldn't be there. But the reality is, as you just said, Brad, it's open game, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's cameras everywhere. I was at lunch with a retired investigator, police officer, who was we were talking about facial recognition and how the cameras are in use in way more places than people think. When you enter a public space, even if it's not on a Jumbotron or a Kiss Me Cam or something like that, you are still on camera somewhere. And in the social media thing, actually, maybe we could talk about that a little bit today too, after we get beyond the CEO part. We always had a challenge with our employees. And, you hate to tell people what they can and can't do in their personal life, but, hey, if you're going to work here, you can't post something on social media that could have a negative impact on the company, or we can't have you work here. And that was hard enough to get through. But then, we kind of got into the whole woke society, and we had some clients that had some very strong opinions on certain topics. And my biggest fear always was that one of our employees was going to post something anti whatever, and our customer was going to come to us and say, "Hey, we don't want that guy working on our account." And it's like, okay, that's not why I got into business. That's not why I'm running a company. I don't want to be dealing with that kind of crap. But that's what the world's become today is, like Brad said, everything is out there for everybody to see, react to, have an opinion about, get hysterical, be unreasonable, whatever. It's a different world. That's why I retired.
So I want to be clear to the people listening. We are not dissecting so much this company, Astronomer, because there's a lot we don't know, but we are using it as a springboard for a discussion. So can you both walk me through this, something like this even? What is the board thinking? Did the CEO even stand a chance? Like as a board, when something of crisis happens like this, what's going on behind the scenes?
I don't think he stood a chance.
No,
Yeah, I don't. No, I don't either. What the company's got to do, and the company did, is they needed to address it immediately. They had to separate themselves from that individual, that behavior, as quickly as possible to reestablish them. So, because what's going to happen is, as quickly as they parted ways with him, they set themselves back on the right track again, almost instantaneously, right? And they've got, from their standpoint, what they get is, we were talking, Brian and I were talking about, they get some publicity.
Yeah.
Good. Any pub is good pub.
How many people knew Astronomer before last week?
Yeah, right, exactly. So
the new CEO, did you see him say that?
No, I didn't hear you.
The fact is he said, the fact is people now know of us who never knew of us before, and we are so excited to show the world our company.
Yeah, turning lemons into lemonade, turning it into an opportunity. Smart.
Yeah, so Matt, I see your question is like two-part. How does it impact, obviously, the company? How does it impact the individual? The company can move on relatively quickly, provided that they're transparent right out of the gate. And that's what they were. They didn't, Brian and I were talking about this before. Had they, delayed out, had they had multiple meetings and figured out, okay, what are we going to say? What are we going to do? How are we going to react to this? That would have been really bad. But what they did is right up front, they said, look, this isn't the principles we stand on. These aren't the values we stand on. This is not what this company is all about. He's tendered his resignation, and I'm sure he didn't tender it. I'm sure they asked for his resignation, and he moved on. The company now sets themselves back on the right path. They've got a great, from my understanding, I think they're like a billion four in revenues, and they've just raised 400 million in additional funding. So they're on the right path, but they had to take immediate action to get themselves back on the, out of that limelight they didn't want to be in. And they did it. They did it actually very well. They didn't take very long to, make an example of him and say that this does not align with our values and principles. And so he'll be moving on. And that was the right thing to do from my vantage point.
Well, and I think there's a huge issue that we've talked about on several shows and several of our guests have talked about when we talk about leadership and how CEO needs to be a leader and what it takes to be a leader. And the number one thing people have talked about is trust. Like you got to build up trust in your team, in your clients, in your partners, in your people, in order for them to follow you and to enable you to lead. And like it or not, marriage is one of those things that people see as the ultimate trust. There's no written contract. It's you've just committed to each other. And so when people see that, they immediately lose trust in the person. And if you're an investor, or you're on the board of directors and you've got a fiduciary duty to, the shareholders, the employees, like, okay, it's just like stealing money from the company or something else that caused us to lose trust in you. I used to have an investor. I think I mentioned this before. Every time he saw me, he asked me two questions. One was, hey, what kind of car are you driving these days? Because his experience was there was two things that caused companies to go down the shitter. And one was that the CEO was living beyond his means,
Interesting.
on company funds and, taking too much out of the company or running too big of an expense. So you would always ask, what kind of car are you driving? And the second one, which he said caused more companies to fail than any other issue, was he said, how's your wife doing? Because he saw this, uh, that we're seeing with the Coldplay concert guy over and over again, and it just destroyed businesses because the people internally didn't know how to deal with it. It made it awkward for them. If customers knew about it or business partners knew about it, it was just a toxic environment. So, like Brad said, I think the board had no choice but to act quickly in this case and move on for the interest of the company.
I also think that there's things that that a CEO can do that are mistakes that are recoverable. I mean, he could do a bad deal. He could lose a bunch of money. But when you start talking about principles like integrity and trustworthiness and ethics, that's stuff that doesn't doesn't get forgotten very easily. When somebody or theft, right? You steal something. It's like, what's that person likely to do that? If they could steal something, or they could be unethical in their actions, or they don't have any integrity. Those are the types of things that, man, once you've demonstrated you don't have those things, or those things have been compromised, it takes a very long time to literally say, oh yeah, don't worry about it. We forgot about that. You're all good. That's those are sorts of things that stick in people's memories for a long time. And that's why I think and I don't remember his name. I think he's got a long road ahead of him now, because he's basically going to have to repair and do serious damage control about his own personal character. And that's a big deal. Company can bounce. I don't know. It's going to be a while. It's going to be a long while. Even though people have short memories, those are things that people are going to remember about him.
So that's an interesting point, Brad. I mean, you see it in sports teams all the time. Sports teams have to make that decision. Do we want this player on our team bringing all the baggage, and can we win a championship? So are there smaller companies possibly out there? And I'm more speaking not for him, but as CEOs running companies, let's say there's a board saying, we can get someone who made a mistake, made an indiscretion, bring some baggage, but we're a smaller company and this person has the skills to elevate us. Is that going to be a decision some companies are going to have to make? You're shaking your head.
I mean, they can, but I mean, you want to use the sports analogy. Colin Kaepernick, it's an integrity issue. It's a character issue. It wasn't, he's got a weak arm, he can't run, he can still run, he can still throw. It was character. And so even smaller market teams said, well, I'm not going with that guy because I know he's already a problem. So no, I don't believe so, Matt. I think this is going to take a long time. I think he's going to have to go off and do something else and somehow reestablish his trust in another way. And that's going to be extremely difficult. The company, conversely, made a very strategic, expeditious move. The board said we have to part ways. They did. I think that was exactly the right thing. But for this individual, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a really tough sell for somebody down the road to say, yeah, I didn't see any of that. And no, that means nothing to us. Or he recovered from it. It's one of those things. It's tough because once you've done that, you wonder, well, when are you going to do that again? And when's it going to rear its head again?
Yeah, we had people. So a lot of it depends on your level, because we had some people that had financial indiscretions in their past that were really good at what they did, and time had passed, and they had kind of done the repentance or whatever you want to call it, and so we brought them on board. And, it was kind of a risk to me because this stuff's out there on the internet. People could find it, and people did. They would bring it up and say, hey, did you know so-and-so did this? And I said, yeah, I did. We've talked it through, and, I'm comfortable with it. And they're not handling any money, for the company.
You're talking like legal issues without getting specific, Brian? Is that what you mean? Something
Yeah,
legal?
yeah.
or even like, you can even like, we joke around a lot about gambling, but it could be a gambling debt. It could be, in my mind, it could be a massive gambling debt where somebody lost a bunch of money in a very public type situation. And like, hey, do you want that guy or that gal running our company when they've shown they've got major indiscretions when it comes to wagering a lot of money? And it's like those type of things I think are recoverable from, because you can actually physically explain, what are you doing? What have you done to improve from that? But I think character issues are completely different. I think, like, if you're a thief and you've stolen, it's really hard for me to believe you're not going to steal again. And I think a lot of people think that way. And I think that's what you've got to overcome. And that could take months, years, decades,
And clear, we're talking not so much him having an affair, but someone, an HR specifically, someone within the company and crossing that boundary and putting the company at risk.
Yeah, because people need to trust those two people. And if they see how they're acting, a lot of people have talked about it this week. The biggest problem for them was the way they reacted.
Yeah,
Like,
well, right. Yeah.
some of the memes where if he had just pretended like he was giving her the Heimlich, it would have been a different story. But the way they reacted, they were both came across as very knowing of what they were doing and very guilty. And I think that really conveyed that message of, oh shit, they knew what they were doing. How can I trust this person anymore going forward? It's funny, Brad, your gambling story made me think of, remember the story about Fred Smith?
Of my gambling?
Of all your gambling, right? All the text messages I get at 3 a.m. from Vegas. No, remember Fred Smith from FedEx bet the payroll on a blackjack table when they were short money? And,
who is that? That was that the CEO of FedEx?
Yeah, the founder of FedEx. He won, so it's a great story.
Oh.
Had he lost, he may have never gotten the job.
Existed.
Right, FedEx wouldn't have existed. Maybe he wouldn't get a job. Who knows? But
wait, is that false? Is that true?
No, that's true. Yeah, he tells that story in his bio. It was in the early days. It wasn't like he went and bet $50 million on a blackjack hand.
I do think though, one of the other things that I found really interesting about this was Brian said how they reacted. The reality was there were other workers there from that company at that concert that night, whether it was just that one woman that was to her right that recently was promoted or to her left on the TV from the TV viewer, but there were others there, I believe. And the reality is, one of the things I first said, you got to be careful. You're online, you're on social media, so everything can be on camera. He, as a CEO of a very established, large technology company, should have realized that, okay, he's a projection of everything. He's a projection of the company. He's a projection of the employees, their product, whether he likes it or not, he is. And so the fact that he was so took such a bold, aggressive action in a public place with others that can see, even if he didn't go on the jumbotron, he could have been taken snapshot by a video from an iPhone, and he just did it so brazenly, like he didn't even care. And he knows that he is projecting an image around his company. And I'm sure that if he was ever watching, a social media video and somebody was wearing an astronomer T-shirt with a lampshade on their head, jumping around drunk in a bar, he would have sat him down and said, "What the hell are you doing? Yeah. You're representing astronomer. And yet here you are in a very public place. You're projecting an image on us, and you chose to do that, like, knowingly." There's just no possible rational thing that could have went through his head thinking that could have been okay. So again, I think they made the right move, and he made a wrong move.
Is it tone deaf? Now, there's some reporting that the girl is not, and I thought so too, was not an employee of astronomer, that it's a doppelganger. She looked like someone, but it's not her. Having said that, I do think there were some people there. Is it tone deaf for them to think, well, other people in the company know about it, but that's had to make them feel uncomfortable, right?
I would think
just
so.
Because, just because somebody thinks my behavior is acceptable doesn't mean that the projection for everybody means it's acceptable. I could be extremely offensive in behavior, Brian can be completely, accepting of it, but 30 other people could be offended by it. So I mean, it's still kind of what's right, what's wrong, and he clearly made a wrong move. And from a CEO's perspective, I mean, not only, did he look bad, but he made the company look bad. He made employees look bad. And luckily for them, luckily for the company, and luckily for those employees, people do have short memories. And what will happen is this will become a distant memory. I can't even remember the guy's name. I was joking with Brian earlier. I don't even remember what the guy's name is. I don't have any clue. I think his name is Andy, I think. But I don't know what the woman's name is. I don't know what his name is. He's the CEO. Basically, had a major indiscretion and almost derailed this company. That's how he's going to be perceived down the road. And but that projection not only hurt him, it hurt the company, and it hurt all other employees that Brian mentioned earlier, trusted in him. They put their trust in him that you're our face, you're a representation, and
So
not
what do you
good.
do if it's you're the CEO and it's a manager at your company, but a manager of like IT?
What do I do?
Yeah.
If it's in that light, I think it's different where you're elevated within the company.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
that, because I mean, he has not done anything. I don't know what their code of conduct says. I don't know what their employee handbook says, but that may not be anything. That may not be a breach of anything on their
Yeah, I don't
end.
think our handbook ever said you couldn't have an affair, but
Well, what's
it was
hard
kind of implied.
yeah,
We'd frown on it at company events.
It would be frowned upon.
Yeah.
it's challenging that the CPO, Chief People Officer, has culture, on her LinkedIn page. Well,
Okay.
that may not be anything legal, but the employee's going to have, you're in charge of culture. Like that's going to be tough for
Maybe that's the culture. Maybe it's a
Who's still there?
company of swingers.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
going to attract
that's
a lot
why
of new employees.
But that's why I said you can't judge him for his indiscretion
Right.
or his infidelity, because for all we know, his wife could actually enjoy that. They could be swingers. Nobody could care. But Brian, like you said,
She could have been at the Black Sabbath concert that night.
right with Ozzy. Oh, that would have been terrible. But the reality is that that we don't know what their personal relationship is about. So that's not what matters. The important thing that mattered in this story, from my standpoint, if I were talking to employees or leaders within my company, I just say that everything is in the open space. There's cameras everywhere, there's social media everywhere, and whether you like it or not, you're representing our company out in, and you should be demonstrating a certain level of professional behavior. If you're going to be wearing if you're not wearing our stuff, that's another thing. Like if an employee's out there not wearing a company shirt, a company hat, whatever, and they're just acting like a bonehead, that's their. But if they're wearing something and representing our company and acting like that, yeah, there's probably going to be a sit down. We're going to have probably a serious talk, potentially a suspension. I don't know about a firing or a termination, but they're going to have to know it's pretty serious, and you have to discipline them in some way. So I don't know, Bart. To answer your question, that'd be a good one. I mean, I'm sure our IT manager right now is watching, going, "Oh, damn."
But do you remember the days when we both worked at the phone company for a while? Something crazy would happen at a company event, and then like 2 days later, a company-wide memo would go out. Like, just a reminder, it's frowned upon for people to take the chili bowl and pour it on someone else's head and dance around like a gypsy, and be like, okay, why did they just say, "Hey, Tom"? Don't do this again.
Yeah, you cannot take a bow and arrow off of the wall at a museum and shoot. It's inappropriate behavior. It's like, well, that was Brian. Brian did that.
That's a joke, but that's a great question. I would want to know from asking a CEO is, do you both worry about holiday parties that there's going to be a lot of alcohol, people who don't normally hang each other? Do you guys lose a little sleep over holiday parties?
Always did, and always left early.
Yeah. No, actually, yeah, it's a good question, Matt. I every time that there's an event where there's going to be alcohol, there's a few things that are talked about. One is who is there a minimum? I'm sorry, a max.
Is there a minimum?
Is there a minimum drink?
You gotta drink
Is there
2 drinks.
Is there a
You
drink
can't get in.
minimum?
You get called
You
in.
can't
We only noticed 4 shot glasses. The minimum was 6. You're
I
gone.
always say that drink minimum. There's a drink minimum. No, there's a drink maximum. Number one. Two, there's got to be somebody that's not necessarily the chaperone because it's not like kids' parents, but someone's got to be like the person that says, "All right, hang on, we have somebody at this party that could be considered a liability if they continue to do X, Y, or Z." And then the third thing would be that we're very adamant about if somebody we believe has had too much to drink, we're going to put them in Uber and we're going to pick up that expense. And we're not going to we don't want anybody to be getting in any cars and driving away, even remotely, with problems with that. So those are things we talk about in advance. But like you said, Matt, those things come up all the time. And it's like, hey, guys, hold on a second. Can't just give a green light on that. Let's talk about the 5 things that are going to happen at that party that night that we're going to put in place to mitigate or at least reduce the risk of something really going wrong. And so far, knock on wood, but it keeps you up at night.
Company too. When we were a small company and we were working out of the back of a warehouse, we used to do Change Your Latitude Friday afternoons, and we'd bring in some beer and do some karaoke and stuff. And then as we got bigger, we moved into a nice office space, and we kept doing that.
And the cases got bigger.
The cases got bigger. Well, the building manager,
the bottles got bigger.
The building manager came to me one day, and she's like, "Your employees are bringing in alcohol on Fridays? Like, that's not allowed in this building." I'm like, "What? We didn't talk about that when we signed the lease." She's like, "Yeah, no, that's not acceptable." I'm like, "They're not going to want to hear this." I said, "Can you write the memo?"
Can you write the memo?
So yeah, as you got bigger, the problems just get bigger, and you've got to be stricter about stuff, giving out tickets and hiring bartenders and limiting the hours, and like you said, providing buses and Ubers, and that's when I stopped enjoying the holiday parties, when you're more worried than you are enjoying.
Yeah, good point.
Let me ask you.
Good.
Plus, you can't do anything stupid as the CEO. So what fun is it?
Yeah. Brad, you mentioned earlier about astronomer and people have short memories and time will pass. Have either of you have an example, and not specifically your found a time that you said, okay, just got to ride this one out. This is just going to pass. It's a little bit of a brush up, whatever that may be, or this may have legs. How do you kind of try to analyze if something you're going through a mini crisis or something that has legs? And
a lot of times it's something that involves a lot of emotion, like a fight or disgruntled employees or some fabricated drama. Somebody said this about this person, and then this person, then has to explain this, and then others jump in on it and going back and forth. And what typically that is a byproduct of is just way too much emotion in the work environment. And what really that needs is time. A lot of times, in some cases, it needs a speech. Sometimes it needs a memo. Sometimes it needs a talk with a certain office or all employees. But the reality is, it really a lot of times just needs time. The employee base needs to know that you're aware of it. You're aware of what that situation is. You communicate by being transparent. You communicate what actually you're doing about that problem, if it's something that needs to be done. And you communicate, hey, this is what we're doing about it. And then you just need to let it simmer down. Simmer down. It just needs to calm down. There's just a lot of emotion. And once the emotion settles, the raw emotion settles, then people start getting back into like, all right, what are we here for? What are we, what's this all about? What's our jobs? And then short memories, and then it starts to go away. And so I would say it's a healthy dose of transparency, addressing it head on, and then allowing the emotion to cool off. For me, is what I've seen through 15 years of running by your side and having 500 to 600 employees, and things just bubble up at different times.
Yeah, and it's an important decision. I mean, it's a good question, Matt, and I don't think there is a playbook. I mean, that's part of being a CEO and a leader is making that call, so I'm sure the chairman of the board, had to make that call, and it's usually when you least expect it. I mean, I'd like to get a call on a, Sunday morning and go, "Hey, your CEO was just on, TikTok and such doing this. What are we going to do?" And your investors are calling you, and to Brad's point, okay, is this something that's going to blow over in a day? Nowadays it doesn't seem like anything blows over quickly because there's these cycles of first the video comes out, then the memes come out, then AI kicks in and people start making more
Parody.
parodies come out, podcasts start talking about it.
I don't know if you guys saw the parody. Did you see when Donald Trump is actually holding Hillary Clinton in front of him, and they acted the whole thing out, and he ducks away, and Hillary's like, "What's going on?" It's just like they're coming from everywhere. They get the, I don't want to say the poor couple because they're not the poor couple in this case, but how they had to dodge out of the way. Well, it's going to come now for the next several weeks, and then people, listen, and then like I said, short memories. I was using the analogy with Brian the other day, which I was saying is like, you ever see when a natural disaster hits an area and it hits an area multiple times? And I'm not trying to make light of the fact, but people will go and they'll build right back where that house got taken out for the third time in a row. And they'll build right back there again 2 years later, and it'll get wiped out again. And it's like people just don't want to come to grips with, like, that's probably not a good thing to do. Not saying that you have all this money in the world and you can go build whatever, but maybe not right there. Can you move over just that way or that direction? It's easier said than done. I recognize that some people don't have the luxury to do that, but people do have short memories and they very quickly forget about things. And so I'm thinking this is going to be in our rearview mirror within probably another month. You will forget the guy's name. You'll forget the woman's name. The company will have moved on, a new CEO, and that'll be it.
That's why we had to record this now.
Yeah.
This is
to lose her job, but the fact is, what happened. So, handicap it. Does she keep her job?
Did she? I don't know. Did she? I know that he's gone, but I thought she's gone too.
Yeah, she's on. I'm guessing there's some legal things that it's not as easy to fire her. So I would assume there's got to be some legal things or crossing I's or seeing if they can do it. I don't know the inside. So what do you think? Do you think the CEO, because of culture, survives this?
There's a lot of dynamics there at play. I don't want to surmise, but there's a victim, take. But the fact that she's head of HR, I think, creates problems for her. If it's the head of engineering, if it's the head of customer service or something, and you may give it a pass. But how can employees come to you with their sexual harassment claims or things like that if
good point,
they saw this? So
going back to sports, you hear it all the time of winning record or losing record, but when you hear that a coach has lost the locker room, that normally is not a good sign.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this is like one of these scenarios. I hate to say it, for the betterment of not only for the company from his perspective leaving, but this might be a good example of starting with a clean slate and saying, look, this is, because just think about it. No matter whether they like it or not, it's going to rear its head again at some point. Aren't you the one that blah, blah? It's like, they don't need that. The company doesn't want the black guy. They want to put this behind them as quickly as they can. They've got bigger things ahead of them, and the last thing they want to do is field questions about this 6 months down the road. Anything that steers this company away from earnings and from growth and from return on investment to shareholders, anything, that board is going to say, we've had enough of this. We start with a clean slate. So.
And you said it, they just raised $200 million recently. This is not the momentum that they're looking to hold them back.
So is this a good time for us to talk with Matt about the video we saw him in this weekend?
First of all, it's not a video, it's a flip book. It's
a sketch
book.
One of those stick.
Yeah. If you don't know how to flip it, because each image is not a big deal. It's only when you flip them together that
and see what you were actually doing. Yeah. That's a good point. Kids don't flip these days, so I'm fine. That's true.
I mean, dancing around on bar tops, Matt, with a lampshade on your head, that's got to be in the days of yore, but yet you continue to do it. And I got to have a sit down with you tomorrow.
I still think if I dance fast enough, this old bulb will light up. And so I put the lampshade up.
It wasn't even funny until the ceiling fan whacked you. That was the best part.
Well, this was a great first try of this new format. Again, for our listeners, hit the subscribe button. We are still putting out regular episodes, but this format is going to allow us to react in real time. Anything that impacts the business world. We got two very talented, charismatic CEOs to discuss events. So you will see this format again soon. And thanks, everyone. Thank you, Brian and Brad, for jumping on last minute so we can get this out in a timely manner. And cheers.
Cheers.
Looking forward to being back in Studio G soon. We'll see you there. Our good friends from Smirnoff.
Okay. And I'm never going to a Coldplay concert. So
yeah, no Coldplay. No. Okay. See you guys.
Take it easy, guys.